In the world of mixed martial arts, there are fighters, and there are warriors. Some are born for the fight. Others are forged in the fire of adversity. But few can say that they gave up everything for the dream of their blood, only to return and write their own story. Aleksandre Topuria is not just the brother of the champion. He is a fighter with his own destiny. His path was marked by pause, sacrifice, and a weight that few would have endured. But when he finally returned to the octagon, he did so with the fury of someone who never stopped believing in himself. The price of success for Aleksandre Topuria has not only been physical, but also emotional. In his rise to glory, he has had to fight against his own image, against rejection, and above all, against the demons that hide behind every victory. Today, we tell you the price of success of Aleksandre Topuria, the shadow of his brother, his unexpected return, and his struggle to prove to the world that his name is also destined for glory. Sacrifices in youth. Throughout his childhood and adolescence, Aleksandre did not have the easy life that many might imagine for someone who is now at the top of the UFC. Like many young people in his country, he had to face poverty and a lack of resources, which led him to seek alternatives to improve his life. It was in this environment that he began training in martial arts, looking for an outlet for his frustration and a way to overcome the barriers in his path. Despite the difficulties, Aleksandre's family was always a fundamental pillar in his life. His parents, though not wealthy, always provided emotional support, motivating him to follow his dreams. The influence of his brother Ilia also played an important role, as although comparisons could be heavy, he was also a source of inspiration. The family shared the same goal: to overcome adversity and move forward. However, Aleksandre had to prove on his own that he was capable of succeeding in his own right, regardless of his brother's career. Like many people from his country, Aleksandre grew up in a context of instability. Georgia, although a country with a rich history and culture, has faced political and economic challenges that directly affected families. For a young man with dreams of being a fighter, these difficulties represented a constant obstacle. As he grew, he realized that to fulfill his dreams, he would have to leave the country and face new challenges elsewhere. Together with his brother Ilia, he decided to move to Spain, where he saw an opportunity to train at a higher level and escape the limitations imposed by the lack of infrastructure in Georgia. However, the transition was not easy. Far from his family and culture, he faced loneliness, language barriers, and the adaptation to a new life. Living in a foreign country was a constant struggle, but it was also the motivation he needed to work harder and improve as a fighter. Aleksandre's first years in Spain were tough. Not only did he face difficulties as a foreigner in a new country, but he also had to deal with a lack of resources to continue training at a professional level. Living in an unfamiliar place and staying committed to his dream of becoming an elite fighter required an unbreakable mentality. Despite the difficulties, his passion for mixed martial arts never wavered. He understood that only by facing his fears, fighting against uncertainty and hardships, would he achieve his goal. Breaking comparisons. An additional challenge for Aleksandre was living in the shadow of his brother, Ilia Topuria, who is a well-known UFC fighter. While Ilia is a prominent figure in the sport, Aleksandre had to deal with constant comparisons and expectations of being equal to or even better than his brother. Despite these obstacles, Aleksandre always showed a strong mentality, determined to carve his own path, not just as Ilia's brother, but as a fighter with his own talent and personality. From the beginning, the expectations of him were overwhelming and weighed on him like a burden. But Aleksandre never stopped, facing criticism, media pressure, and opponents who tried to bring him down at every step. Sibling rivalry can sometimes be a source of motivation, but in his case, Aleksandre always tried to maintain his identity as an independent fighter. However, this came with its own emotional challenges. Many in the martial arts community saw him as the second brother, which is a difficult label to carry. The need to forge his own path, not just as a fighter but as a person, was a constant burden. Success does not come without sacrifices. For Aleksandre Topuria, the road to the top of the UFC has been anything but easy. A man who was born in the shadow of his brother Ilia, but fought tirelessly to prove that his name has its own story. Every punch, every fight, every decision cost him more than just sweat. It cost him his peace, his reputation, and at times, even himself. The internal struggle and motivation. Aleksandre has spoken on multiple occasions about the importance of overcoming not only external obstacles, but also internal ones in a sport as demanding as mixed martial arts. The mental battle is just as crucial as the physical one. The constant effort to stand out and not be overshadowed by his brother's fame made him stronger, but it also generated a level of internal pressure. He found himself battling his own insecurities. On one hand, he wanted to prove that he was as capable as Ilia. On the other, he feared being perceived as someone who only shined in his brother's shadow. The criticism and comparisons were constant, but Aleksandre focused on his goal: to reach the highest level and earn his place in the UFC without depending on anyone else. This pressure became one of the greatest driving forces in his life. And as he advanced in his career, Aleksandre began to prove that he is a fighter in his own right, with a unique style and an unyielding mentality. In action, the beginning of his professional career was not easy, as competition in mixed martial arts is fierce, and few manage to stand out without years of hard work, sacrifice, and in many cases, tough blows. Aleksandre started in the regional circuit, fighting in lesser-known events before making the jump to the UFC, where the stakes were much higher. But his focus was clear. If he wanted to go far, he had to train harder, fight smarter, and prove that his talent was unique. Aleksandre is a difficult opponent to beat. With a solid foundation in judo and intensive training in other MMA disciplines, his arsenal of techniques makes him unpredictable. In his fights, he demonstrates an impressive ability to adapt to his opponent's style, making him even more dangerous. His focus is not only on dominating physically, but also mentally. With a cold and calculating attitude, he always seems one step ahead, both in strategy and emotional control, which is essential in high-level fights. He does not get intimidated easily and always looks for a way to emerge victorious, even when the fight gets tougher. Before his first fight, Aleksandre had already demonstrated his skill in disciplines like judo, but the world of MMA was a new and much more unpredictable territory. Although he had already trained in boxing, kickboxing, and wrestling, his transition to MMA was not easy. Facing an experienced opponent in a professional fight represented a leap of faith for both him and his team. On February 9th, 2025, at the UFC 312 event held at the Kudos Bank Arena in Sydney, Australia, Aleksandre Topuria made his UFC debut, facing the Australian Colby Thicknesse in the bantamweight category. From the start of the fight, Topuria showed a firm stance and solid defense, neutralizing Thicknesse's kicks and forcing him to retreat toward the cage. He landed liver hooks and successfully defended against his opponent's takedown attempts. A powerful right overhand from Topuria landed directly on Thicknesse, leaving him vulnerable. He closed the round with a spectacular suplex that sent Thicknesse crashing onto the mat. In the second round, Topuria continued to dominate, demonstrating excellent head movement and feints that frustrated Thicknesse. Although he did not secure the knockout, he maintained control of the fight, accumulating a significant lead in significant strikes. During the third and final round, Thicknesse landed a straight right, but Topuria took the fight to the ground, securing a favorable position and looking for the finish. At the end of the fight, the judges awarded Topuria a unanimous decision victory. This triumph in his UFC debut highlighted Aleksandre Topuria's talent and potential in the bantamweight division, generating expectations about his future in the organization. Aleksandre made it clear that he was not just a product of his family or his brother Ilia, but a fighter with innate talent, an unbreakable mentality, and the ability to compete at the highest level. Aleksandre Topuria is ready for the biggest challenges inside the octagon, and his journey to the top of the UFC is just beginning. Not only is he solidifying his place in the UFC, but Aleksandre is making a name for himself as an elite contender. Many have started to consider him as one of the most dangerous and promising fighters in his division. In the coming months, details about his next fight are expected to be announced, depending on his team's strategy and the opportunities that arise in the division. The story of Aleksandre Topuria is one of constant struggle. From his years of financial hardship in Georgia, to the challenging transition to a new life in Spain, through personal sacrifices and the pressure of living up to expectations, his journey has been anything but easy. Over the years, he has proven that true success does not come without sacrifices, and that victories inside the octagon are merely a reflection of the hard work, resilience, and strength he has built outside of it. Every blow he has taken in his career, whether in training or in fights, has been part of his personal growth process. And although he continues to face challenges inside and outside the octagon, his story is one of unwavering determination and passion for achieving his dreams, regardless of the adversities. The price of success in Aleksandre Topuria's life proves that although he has been shaped by adversity, his success does not come only from his physical ability, but from the mental strength he built over the years. Supported by his family and driven by the challenges he faced, do you think Aleksandre lives in the shadow of his brother Ilia, or has he managed to forge his own identity inside and outside the octagon? Leave us your answer in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.